Hey everyone, so tomorrow is New York State's primary elections. Nope, not the ones for Congress where people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won. That was in June. This is the New York Democratic Party's form of voter suppression, confusing people so much and spreading out dates of primaries, making registration deadlines incredibly early. So, if you haven't already registered for a party affiliation, bad news, can't vote in the primary. Sorry to say, that's already passed. But if you have registered, polling locations open at 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. in New York State. And you really should vote because these are incredibly important elections. And there are really a trio of progressives that are getting a lot of attention from the left and were the ones endorsed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Our Revolution, etc. Bernie endorsed two of the three of these candidates, Zephyr Teachout and Jermaine Williams. Also, Cynthia Nixon is running against Andrew Cuomo. Remember those names. So let's start with the most high-profile one, the governor's race between Cynthia Nixon and Andrew Cuomo. As many of you already know, actress and progressive activist Cynthia Nixon is challenging incumbent Governor Andrew Cuomo in the state governor's race. Andrew Cuomo, son of former Governor Mario Cuomo, has racked up lots of Democratic establishment endorsements. Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden come to mind. While Cynthia has been endorsed by a lot of grassroots organizations like Our Revolution and the Working Families Party, and of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, on policy, Nixon is further left than Cuomo. She wants Medicare for all, single payer in New York State. She wants to fully legalize marijuana, abolish ICE, wants universal rent control, etc. Not to mention that she's a woman and she'd be the first openly gay governor of the state, something that Democratic establishment folks purportedly care about. But on corruption, you can draw an even starker comparison to Cuomo. Here are just some of the headlines about his corruption. Cuomo received $25,000 from Weinstein lawyers' firm as he suspended probe. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo halted an investigation into the Manhattan DA's handling of the Harvey Weinstein case, just as the law firm representing the Hollywood producer gave Cuomo's campaign $25,000. Whoops! And here's another. Joseph Percoco, ex-Cuomo aide, found guilty in corruption trial. Percoco was Cuomo's top aide, who Cuomo's father called his third son. Joseph Percoco, once the governor's executive deputy secretary and longtime confidant, was convicted of soliciting and accepting more than $300,000 in bribes from executives working for two companies with state business. And what's crazy is he's not the only close Cuomo associate convicted of crimes. Elaine Caballeros, a man who headed Cuomo's economic initiative in the state, was convicted in a bid-rigging scheme favoring companies that he was associated with by giving them state contracts. Really similar story, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Cynthia Nixon takes no corporate PAC money and mostly is funded by small donors, while Andrew Cuomo had to scramble and offer Billy Joel tickets to people who would give him $5 donations, or some of the donations came from his campaign chairs, address, $69 of them, etc. It's not to even mention the insane mailer that Cuomo just sent out accusing Nixon of anti-Semitism for her support of BDS. It's just one gross story after another after another. But the question is, despite all of this, can Cynthia Nixon win? Because Cuomo has a stranglehold on the Democratic Party in the state, and a lot of people are skeptical about Nixon's background as an actress. Well, the polling isn't looking good, but I actually think that the polling might be quite misleading. So here's an interesting tweet from Nate Silver, of all people. He's good on some issues on the matter. I'm sort of torn between three takes. Cuomo is incredibly ruthless and reckless to be campaigning like this when he's up 40 points. I believe he's referring to the mailer, the anti-Semitism mailer that I just referenced. 2, can't really blame him if you're also going to blame Crowley at all for taking their races for granted. 3, the private polling must show it closer. And that's really where I fall. These polling models are flawed on the state level. We saw that in the Crowley versus Ocasio-Cortez race, as Nate Silver mentioned. These pollsters are using outdated models of who are likely voters. What Ocasio-Cortez did and what Cynthia Nixon is even doing is expanding the electorate, making voters who generally didn't participate. Does that mean that Cynthia Nixon's going to win? No, it doesn't. I still think that it's a long shot. But do I think that she's getting like 22% as the poll indicates? No. Look, in 2014, when there was no momentum against Cuomo, when there was very low turnout, Zephyr Teachout got 33% of the vote to Cuomo's 63%. With all of this national media attention, you're telling me that Cynthia Nixon won't beat that? I'm calling BS there. But now that I've mentioned Zephyr Teachout, let's move on to the Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor's race, because those are very important too, and progressives have an even better chance of winning those races, progressives like Zephyr Teachout. Attorney General, there are 4 Democratic contenders. Leisha Eve, a lawyer who currently sits on the Port Authority Board of Commissioners and who served as counsel to Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton when they were in the Senate, and as Deputy Secretary for Economic Development for Cuomo. New York City Public Advocate Letitia James, Sean Patrick Maloney, the representative for New York's 18th Congressional District, who is also fighting to hold on to his seat in the 18th Congressional District, and Zephyr Teachout, a Fordham University law professor who ran against Cuomo in the 2014 gubernatorial primary. Now, Zephyr Teachout has been endorsed by the New York Times and Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, so those are great endorsements. She has been a fantastic progressive for years. She was fighting for campaign finance reform before Bernie made it really cool. I know, because I read her book back in college. And polling shows that Maloney is winning 25% to James's 24% to Teachout's 18%, but it's incredibly tight. And as I said, we cannot trust these poll models right now on the state level. People are excited to vote for Zephyr Teachout. She's literally an anti-corruption lawyer. She's the only candidate of the ones I listed not taking corporate money. And the alleged frontrunner, Patrick Maloney, is as pro-corporate as a Democrat can get. He voted yes on deregulating the banks earlier this year, and this is his insane explanation as to why. If you look at the African American Credit Union Association and the African American Small Bankers, they are the guys who benefited from easing some of the restrictions, Maloney said, using lenders of color as a shield for his vote. Maloney maintained that the legislation didn't touch any of the important restrictions we put on the big banks. False. It's been his go-to refrain each time he's been pressed on the Dodd-Frank rollback, echoing a chorus of lawmakers singing songs of sincere deregulatory innocence. Oh, answers like that are just so vomit-inducing. It's what corporate Democrats do, hide behind race and identity, while actually pushing for policies that would harm minorities, that would harm everyone. And you wonder why progressives are excited about Teachout, because this is the guy who could win over her in New York, in a blue state like New York. And lastly, let's talk about Jermaine Williams as well, who is running for lieutenant governor. In New York, you vote for lieutenant governor on another ballot. He is another strong progressive. Incumbent Kathy Hochul, a lawyer and former county clerk and House member from Buffalo, New York, is facing off against challenger Jermaine Williams, who currently represents the 45th District in New York City Council. Williams has campaigned with Nixon on issues like reforming the criminal justice system and universal rent control, and has been endorsed by the New York Times, who wrote that time and time again over his near decade in public service, Mr. Williams has brought issues to the fore that affected millions of New Yorkers but had gone unaddressed by the city's leaders. So yes, the New York Times did endorse Cuomo, but also endorsed Zephyr Teachout and Jermaine Williams. So, they went 2 for 3, in my opinion. Jermaine is allegedly down by 20 points versus his opponent, but nearly 35 remain undecided, 35%. But again, the polling is not the gospel, not even close. The polling metrics have not caught up with the enthusiasm of the progressive base. We're seeing this throughout the country. We just saw it so recently with Andrew Gillum, who was in 3rd place, like Zephyr Teachout is now, similar spacing, but ended up winning the governor's race in Florida. So now, for Cynthia Nixon, this is a much bigger gap, and it's an uphill battle for her. I understand that, but I truly think that Jermaine and Zephyr have a great shot, and they can make a real difference in this world, not just in the state of New York. So, New Yorkers, get out and vote tomorrow, September 13th, 2018. Let's get it.